Hey everybody, it's Tuesday. Again, Two Women Talking is on hiatus, so it's one woman talking for now, or me. I don't know. I'm kind of, sort of a girl. Yeah, I want to talk about the Ubisoft thing because it's almost like an annual tradition now, or every other year, that somebody just decides to try to do some sort of hostile takeover of Ubisoft. And there's been two waves of it. One, this teeny tiny minority shareholder claimed they had like the support of 10% of the shareholders to either sell to a venture capitalist or take the company private. And that seemed to go away. And then there's this thing about Tencent acquiring, I've read different stories. It seems like the ownership stake would flip between the Guillemets. And Tencent owns about like 9.5% right now. The family owns like 20.5%, and my understanding is that would flip. That could be wrong. Obviously, these are all rumors. As of this recording, there's been no official statement, but I'm pre-recording this week, so it may have come out since then. But why is this happening? Because Ubi has had some stumbles with licensed IP, but also with Assassin's Creed. Avatar, what is it? Something of Pandora did well, but not as well as that license, which is very expensive, needed to. Now, new IPs are tough too, and it's been a very competitive market the last few years. But then Star Wars Outlaws, there was that big controversy ahead of time, but then it kind of released. Okay, apparently there was some glitches. The real disappointment for me is that people didn't like the stealth combat, and that's a marketing failure. Now, they may have wanted to hide the fact it was a stealth game, but apparently they've patched it to make it a little easier. I mean, to me, that's Ubisoft going back to the like Splinter Cell and Assassin's Creed original trilogy, right? Like, okay, like, Assassin's Creed 1, 2, which is 3 games, and then 3. That's very confusing. The original trilogy is like 6 games. Assassin's Creed 1, the Ezio trilogy, Assassin's Creed 3, and then whether you want to count Liberation as its own game or just DLC, I don't know. But there's nothing wrong with a stealth game. And this is when I'm an asshole and think, get good! But yeah, it's Star Wars. People want it to be accessible. And apparently it's the hard fails on the stealth that bother people. And to me, I'm like, ooh, that makes me more intrigued by the game. But yeah, a Star Wars title doesn't blow up huge. Obviously, that ain't great. Though, one could argue that the stink on Star Wars as an IP in general, because of Disney not properly managing the most toxic elements of the fandom, could have hurt that game, as opposed to the Star Wars brand helping it. Either way, Ubisoft's stock price, it's low right now. Well, it's not low because now that there's rumors that Tencent's gonna buy it, stock price goes back up. What the fuck? And this is what I want to talk about for the rest of this video. Why? Please don't. It's very hard to not listen to shareholders with this. It's very hard to not listen to the markets in the short term, but here's why they're wrong. First of all, that's going to be really difficult for the Ubisoft locations in Canada, because we've got this whole Chinese Communist Party influence scandal going on with our government and academic institutions, and it'll be real awkward to have your biggest shareholder be a Chinese company with obvious ties to the Chinese Communist Party. And the reason I say the Chinese Communist Party is because there is nothing wrong or bad about individual Chinese people. They are not their government, right? We can't stereotype individuals based on the insane psyops that government is doing. No people are their government, but yeah, awkward. But also, I just like how Ubisoft fucks up more than I like how the other major third-party publishers fuck up, or how Microsoft fucks up. And I'm forgetting, I should have looked this up before I looked it up, but the Bethesda Starfield, there it is. Okay, I looked it up. I remember now. Starfield, we don't know what's gonna happen with that. Major stumble for both Bethesda, but also Microsoft, because that was a big Game Pass incentive, right? And it released half-baked. EA, I was trying to remember the last cool thing that EA put out. I mean, pressure's on Veilguard, right? Like, on the new Dragon Age game, but, you know, EA demolished Mass Effect, and Dragon Age has got this identity crisis. They want to be the cool new thing, and I mean, is there pent-up demand because it's taken longer to come out? Probably, but, you know, as I've said, and some people are super stoked for it, and that's cool. I just think that the players that they are making this game for are not the people that sampled Dragon Age Origins and went, no, it's really good, play it despite the shitty graphics. So, you know, I kind of understand how some of the old school, like, expanded universe Star Wars fans are feeling about, yeah, they don't want me as a player anymore. They just don't. They want younger, cooler kids. Okay. Now, because that's not what expanded universe fans did, but that's what I'm doing. But other than Sony, who is sort of lawful neutral on how they do things, they just have a point system, and as long as, you know, there's a certain number of points, you get a sequel. Obviously, sales matter, but Sony has shown they are willing to fund things when they believe in it. I'm a bit concerned about Sony's pivot to IP, making everything into a movie or TV show. We'll see what happens with Last of Us Season 2. Do we really want to go through this again? We're going to go through it again. But can God of War work as a live action? I don't know. Yes, there have been Kratoses before. How am I blanking on his name now? God, because T.C. Carson's in my name now, in my head now, who was Kratos before. Oh my God. You can tell I'm not 100%. Chris Judge. There we go. I was like, Mike Judge. That's not right. No, that's the guy who did Beavis and Butthead. Yeah, Chris Judge. Phenomenal. But see, he is Kratos. And they probably won't use him as Kratos in a show. And a lot of people would be real disappointed by that. I think that's a mistake. But maybe it's just not something that can work as a live action. Do it like, and I know everybody says, do it like Arcane. It takes a long time to do something that looks like Arcane, so I understand why they don't want to, but just leave some things as games. But I get it. profit margins are much higher in film and TV. You get a lot more people watching for an hour a week or binge watching 8 episodes at a time, or, going to see thank God movies have dropped below 3 hours again. Holy shit. But you know what I mean? Less commitment, more sampling, more people will see it. So, but then you got Activision and EA that, let's face it, are just soulless corporate entities. And as fucked up as Ubisoft is, they do crazy shit. That Beyond Good and Evil 2 thing with the crowdsourced assets, nice try. That was fucked up. It clearly didn't work. We haven't heard about that game since, but crazy shit. The NFT crap? What? And, okay, that wasn't great. But Ubi just does crazy shit. They've always been the crazy shit company. And they're up and they're down. The same way Nintendo is like its own thing, and you never ever count Nintendo out. Remember the Wii U? Yeah. Remember all the people going, oh, that's it, Nintendo's dead. And I'm like, never, ever, ever count out Nintendo. It's its own thing. And Ubisoft is its own thing. The NFT thing, not cool. That's the not great side of Ubisoft. The how do you do fellow kids trying so hard to be cool thing when they're not cool. They're not cool in that way, trying to be very cultural and all that stuff. But the fact that they are not an Asian or North American structured company, I think is really important to games. The same way I'm a bit concerned. I mean, okay, the crunch on Witcher 3 was shit, but the fact that more and more CDPR stuff is moving into the US, I get why they're doing it, but, it would be like if Remedy moved out of Finland. I'd be like, no, we need companies that have a different, not just view of the world, but also how you do business. I mean, French labor laws, very different than anything in North America. They're even stricter than Canada's. And I mean, we have the America's hat phenomenon that we can't do certain things because the US style attitudes get up here. You can't do that. That's communism. That's fascism, right? No, it's taking care of people and actually making work matter, which is the foundation of capitalism, that your work, not just the land you own, is worth something. You get paid for an honest day's work, right? That's capitalism, not corporatism. And that's the thing, that we need those different perspectives. We need something that isn't Japanese or Korean or increasingly Chinese. Though I do think that the, companies like Shift Up and things like that, the different perspective they're bringing to it. I mean, Stellar Blade and the 4B movement, that's significant. The thing that I love about video games is we talk about, the Valley, the Bay Area, but there's no Hollywood of games. Despite them continuing to try, Austin, everybody goes there, but there's studios in Florida, there's, Texas. They're just trying to bleed BioWare Edmonton dry because they want to all go to a right to work state. Not good. Not how BioWare's designed to work. The fact that it is a truly global industry with truly global sentiment, and we can all learn from each other, is part of what makes things so loud. But I think we can be cooler, to be fairer to each other, but not lose why that's good. And I do think a major game developer with more of a European sentiment towards things, how they run their company. You notice it's been the one company, they laid off a few people, but there wasn't like the mass layoffs that every other company had. That doesn't just happen. That's part of the ethos of Ubisoft. And the minute somebody other than the founders is running that company, that's gonna be gone. And that's gonna be not great for dev, because you can do games less expensively when you retain people from game to game. And you'll notice that they'll develop assets for one game and put it in another game, and people say, oh, that means all their games look the same. But what it means is that these games can be made for cheaper, and let's face it, a lot of AAA games look pretty samey. We don't get a Ghost of Tsushima every so often. You know, that game looked different, played different. That's why people fell in love with it. But you gotta pay the bills. So you gotta do something like Assassin's Creed, which, let me say, the return to formula on Mirage made me so happy. That game was great. I waited so long to play that game because they're just so burned out on the massive, big, open world RPG style. I liked the games, but they weren't Assassin's Creed to me. And then Mirage came along. It's like, oh my god, this game's amazing. It's old school. I'm back. I'm invested. And then the thing with Shadows happened, and obviously that's part of why Ubisoft is in such a precarious position. And I've heard various things about what happened there. I'm not sure how reliable the commentary is, and I don't want to betray a confidence. So I've heard different things, but I don't think that was intentional wokeness. I think that was history nerding, and, you know, with a side of we gotta show something, and it can't be the Star Wars Outlaws thing all over again where the graphics weren't polished. And that is the official reason, I believe, at least the thing that leaked officially to the press, is that they're delaying it for 3 months to polish it. And of course that's gonna, you know, the stock price is gonna go down. Stocks go down, stocks go up. Stocks go down, stocks go up. Stocks go down, stocks go up. Forget what Homer Simpson thing I'm doing there. But, you know, that every so often this happens with Ubi, and people try to buy it up because it's the last one to buy. You know, Activision's gone first party. Is Activision first party? I think so. Bethesda, first party now. EA is EA, right? I mean, EA, see, they get insulated by their sports franchises that will just sell and sell and sell and sell, so they can afford to fuck up Mass Effect. But you know what? If they weren't being greedy and trying to squeeze profits out of things by hopping on shitty anti-consumer trends, they wouldn't have fucked up Mass Effect. Veilguard, the latest Dragon Age, formerly known as Dreadwolf, formerly known as Dragon Age 4, apparently took so long to develop because they started it as a live service game, and thank God that didn't come out. But I guess it was, you know, EA pushing everything towards the Anthem model, and we saw how that turned out, right? So, could you imagine that? Because remember how they fucked up Fable? that way too. They turned into this multiplayer shit. And the thing that was great about Fable is farting around in a single player world where you can just sort of lose yourself. And I mean, people like multiplayer games like Destiny, though apparently that's peaked and has fallen too. But you know, those single player experiences, yes, they don't make as much money, but they are the games that inspire brand loyalty. And they are the games that get made into movies. They are the games that, I mean, the problem with Mass Effect is everybody and their uncle in Hollywood ripped off elements of Mass Effect, and so it's got the John Carter phenomenon. Nothing's original anymore. Which, considering it was a pastiche of a bunch of sci-fi franchises, that is mass media going ass to mouth. But it really is, you know, Ubi has those weird pirate games that are for somebody, but Ubi's always done those weird kind of soft, who is this for games. Was it Skull and Bones? Is that what it is? I'm not sure, but somebody clearly really liked pirates, and I hate people like pirates. Let's make a multiplayer pirate game. I have no idea how that game's doing. For Honor did pretty well. It seems like they oversaturated Tom Clancy and is sort of stepping back. But again, you know, Rainbow Six went ongoing, you know. So it just goes. And it's the risky titles. It's the ones that... And this is what bugs me, has always bugged me. This was a major thing when I was a games journalist. And I feel this way to this day. That two things are true about games that suck. They're two things the industry can really work on, right? People claim, and the cries for innovation are less now, but let's face it, people still want new features and improvements and something other than just cool graphics. You hear, we just want good gameplay. Well, if you just want good gameplay, then why are you arguing about how hot the main character is, right? That's a bad look there. But if you want good gameplay, they have to be able to experiment with gameplay. And sometimes it's going to work. Sometimes it's not. And I always reward studios that get caught trying. And you could, you know, people say, oh, they're all just tower, unlock the map. They're all the same. But no, Far Cry has a very different vibe to it than Assassin's Creed does. Assassin's Creed has a very different vibe than Splinter Cell. I'm a fan of all those franchises, and so I know why they're different. And I mean, with the Assassin's Creed franchise, they have taken risks. Remember when they just broke their entire system to go to more of a parkour model? And that's why Unity was like kind of rough, and they refined it. But you go back and try to play those games pre that innovation, they're pretty jank. I mean, they feel jank now. They're certainly not as smooth, but it took them a few titles to figure it out. The reason the remasters are so much fun to play on the original games is, oh my god, that first game, the first Assassin's Creed, it was a great idea. But Assassin's Creed 2 was leaps and bounds better than Assassin's Creed 1. Just on that chase mechanic. Just on the core mechanics of the franchise. And of course, I think they were smart when BioWare stopped making good single-player RPGs. They pivoted to good single-player, more RPG style. Obviously, Odyssey was the pinnacle of that, and then Valhalla kind of continued that. But now, you know, going back to the original formula with Mirage, but with these cinematic enhancements that really, the game is just beautiful. It's so seamless in what they've done. And I really liked that it was, I mean, okay, it's still, you get plenty of playtime in it. But there's an example of a game they make smaller, and so it was more polished. You know, it's not 300 hours to finish it, but man, all the little details, the not just pretty, but it just felt alive, that game. And they had to make a lot of mistakes along the way to get there, to something that felt like a living product. And when you talk about immersion, when you talk about interactivity, if feeling alive is, that's what you're aiming for. But you have to, you know, birth is painful and messy. And so if we don't allow them to fuck up and do better, if it's just, oh, sell every time they shit the bed, and it's Ubi, they're gonna shit the bed, right? But hey, remember Cyberpunk? There's a reason so many of these games, Starfield, so many of these games are coming out half-baked. They're very expensive, they're huge, they have to spend all this money to make all this money. It's the investment model that is the problem. I mean, one of the issues with Song of Sparkle Muffin, the reason I had to pull the plug, is that I didn't take any money from it. And, you know, the only person that got paid was the person I had to cut ties with, and there's no money left to pay somebody else. You know, it was a shoestring because we didn't have venture capital. We didn't have some independent, we didn't have millions to burn for years and years and years. Like, it takes a movie 2 years to get made. It takes a game usually 7. If you're Dragon Age 10, you know, these Ubisoft games, they don't get made in a year. They have different teams, you know, different teams working on these different titles, and they all work together, and that as well is unique. And I do think that there's something special about that company, and part of what's special about it is their willingness to just do crazy shit and completely shit the bed. And then they have a Wii U, well, not a console, but a game version of it, every 3 to 5 years, which, okay, but they ship a lot of games. And so I think the stock price is not a realistic benchmark of how the company's doing. Because let's face it, the stock price dropping is them being punished by the markets for doing what gamers want them to do. Don't rush and ship a broken game. Delay it when it's ready. And they decided they need more time for whatever. We'll find out. There's no way they can radically change the story in 3 months. There isn't. That's a polish period. And it might be delayed again. Who knows? But guess what? Every fucking Naughty Dog game does that. And part of the thing about Ubi is they never punished anybody for being critical of them. And they were one of the few companies that were like that. I got blacklisted from Blizzard because I said, hey, World of Warcraft, the fact that it's so popular is the reason that they haven't done a bunch of quality of life enhancements and a noob zone for new players to get more people into the game. They're just pumping the same money out of the same players. And that was like right before it turned out that their 10 million player base was, cheap Chinese accounts. Um, yeah, Blizzard held a grudge on that one, man. But I eventually stopped getting access to Ubisoft because a publicist, like one of the PR people from the company that had the Microsoft account, the Xbox account, who did score settle and hold grudges, moved over to UB Toronto, and that was the last I heard from UB Toronto. So she brought her score settling over to UB. Before that, they let you criticize them. And I think that it's important for those sorts of things to be talked about. Like EA treats you like shit. Treats you like shit unless you're big. It was part of the annual ritual that, oh, you're not one of the big ones. Well, we can't find your appointment. Wait in line. You know, it was like, anyway, sour grapes. Activision, different kind of shit. Oh my God. Activision was the most sexist company out of all of them. So that lawsuit didn't surprise me at all. UB were as disorganized as they were, and as much as it was the one where when I was nobody, I knew they were letting in and giving me access because it was a favor, and they actually did believe in promoting people who seemed to be smart but didn't have like a major outlet yet. And so it was always very last minute and always very chaotic, but they were the only company that really, instead of going, we believe in diversity, and if you don't, you're a bad person, they actually went, okay, we're going to make sure some female journalists get in on these things at a time where that was not cool. It was a time where female games journalists were not seen as the equal to men because a lot of them didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. I did. So, they did that, and they didn't have to. It gave them nothing. And I think that part of the reason that they are so hammered on so often is that there's no consequence for not doing it. And maybe not. The PR department's probably a completely different set of people. But, once that cord was cut, it's so hard to get back in again. But they truly believe in community, and they truly believe in user experience. And everything I know about the company indicates to me, yes, the sexual harassment scandal aside, not aside, let's incorporate it, because out of all the parties that, you go to as media, you knew the Ubisoft ones were gonna be the absolute wildest, and there absolutely was inappropriate behavior at them. Guys doing shit to other guys, never mind the women being specific targets, right? And it did go too far. And it wasn't, I mean, in some cases it was the typical nefarious, power-hungry narcissist. But that person got removed. Not, but, it was the least evil of the publishers. That's the only way I can put it. And I've heard a lot of people saying about the potential Tencent acquisition of, I don't like them now, but this is worse. And I think that that's the general feeling. And the thing is, they're not... Every company's got their problems. Every company's got, their toxic veins. Every company's got their flaws. But out of all the majors, they try not to lay people off. They are very big on retention. People stay at the company, 5-10 years, which is very rare in tech, very rare in games. You'll notice how few of the original BioWare people are still there. Yeah. So that matters. And if they get acquired and that corporate culture changes, we lose a major bastion of how AAA game dev can be a somewhat secure job. And I think that's really bad for the industry. So even though they shit the bed on games, they do some things right. So that's my thoughts. Hope you like this video. Take care. Bye-bye. Give to Eileen Zant's crowdfund to save her house if you like this video. Link in the description box below. Wow, I blew that. Anyway, thanks. Still not 100%. Bye.